Pennsylvania remains one of the top retirement destinations in the US, especially if you're in the Northeast. The state is home to Lancaster, which was recently voted the top retirement destination in all of the US. In this two-part series, I will be discussing the pros and the cons associated with retiring in the state of Pennsylvania. In part one of this series, I already talked about the benefits of retiring to the state of Pennsylvania. And so in part two of the series, I'm going to be discussing some of the downsides associated with retiring to the state of Pennsylvania. Hey there, my name is Chichi Aguoji. I'm a New York-based realtor with a focus on helping seniors and retirees sell their homes and find the best locations to retire. In this video, I'll be discussing the cons associated with retiring to the state of Pennsylvania. So without further ado, let's get into it. Con number one, inheritance taxes. Otherwise known as death taxes, Pennsylvania is one of 17 states in the US that charges taxes on your estate after you pass. So if you do decide to retire to the state of Pennsylvania, you can expect that when you pass, the state will charge up to 15% of the assets that make up your entire estate. Now, the exact percentage is dependent on who you designate as your beneficiary, but the rollout is like this. If you designate a spouse as your beneficiary, then your estate tax, your inheritance tax for that spouse will be 0%. If you designate a direct heir or a child, then the estate tax will charge 4.5%. If you designate a sibling as your beneficiary, then your estate tax will be 12%. Any other individual or group or organization designated outside of these three groups will be charged 15% taxes. Now, knowing this is only half the battle. The other half is doing something about it, so to ensure that you don't have to pay these inheritance taxes. So there are tax strategies that are out there that allow you to avoid having your estate be charged this inheritance tax when you in fact do pass. So I am not a tax professional, but you're more than welcome to reach out to an accountant or some sort of tax strategist to help you get familiar with these tax strategies to ensure that you make the best tax decisions for yourself if you ultimately do decide to choose Pennsylvania as your retirement destination. Con number two, Pennsylvania is a dirty state. According to Best Life Online, Pennsylvania ranks as the 6th dirtiest state in all of the US. And with 52 tons of trash buried per capita, it ranks the top 3 most waste per resident, again, all across the country. Now, the primary driver behind this trend might have something to do with the surge in population growth that Pennsylvania experienced over these last few years. And this is especially true in its metropolitan areas. So over the last few years, Pennsylvania has actually added about 200,000 people to its overall population. So you can imagine if you're a state that is not prepared to be able to service this increased levels of population, this is going to cause you to have some issues as it relates to cleaning up trash or ensuring that overall quality of life remains on par with what it was prior to the surge. So trash is not the only thing that you should be concerned about if you were to retire to the state of Pennsylvania. The state also gets really poor rankings when it comes to air quality. Taking a look at this infographic, which was put together by Air Filters Delivered, we see that the states that are shaded in blue have some of the freshest, cleanest air all across the country, while the states that are shaded in orange have some of the not so clean, fresh air all across the country. So just by looking at the map, you can see that the state of Pennsylvania is shaded dark color orange, which means that it has one of the worst air qualities in the US. Now, the poor air quality that Pennsylvania is experiencing may have to do with the fact that there are still some coal-burning power plants that exist throughout the state. The good news, however, is that due to a new law that forces these power plants to be responsible for cleaning their wastewater, some of these power plants have opted to be shutting down in the near future. Hey there, if you're enjoying the video so far, feel free to like, feel free to subscribe, and let's keep going. Con number 3. Brutal weather in the winter. Residents of Pennsylvania are well accustomed to the severe weather and high amount of snowfall that the state receives throughout the winter months. In fact, various cities throughout Pennsylvania always top U.S. list of cities that receive the most amount of snowfall each year. So if you're someone who's looking to get away from snow and get away from the cold in retirement, Pennsylvania might not be the state for you, because the state of Pennsylvania receives an average of 38 inches, which is 3 feet, of snow every single year. Now, another thing to keep in mind regarding snowfall and severe weather conditions as it relates to the state of Pennsylvania is, as you know, if you're a driver, people's driving patterns and driving patterns tend to change when there is snow on the ground. And due to Pennsylvania's poor infrastructure, this, coupled with poor weather conditions, has led to some pretty high-profile accidents in the past. So poor roads coupled with severe weather conditions just means you want to take even extra precaution if you decide to retire in Pennsylvania and then you find yourself having to drive in these cold, severe, icy weather conditions. Con number 4, poor infrastructure. So I've already alluded to this in con number 3, the fact that overall Pennsylvania's infrastructure is not the best. But infrastructure does not consist of only roads. It consists of bridges, tunnels, waterways, anything that has to do with helping individuals get the needs and the services that they require to lead a happy life. Now, the American Society of Civil Engineers puts together an infrastructure report card every single year where they rate every state in the US based on their infrastructure. And in 2022, Pennsylvania got a grade of a C- when it comes to its overall statewide infrastructure. Now, the report does look at 15 different indicators for infrastructure, and out of these 15 indicators, 13 of which Pennsylvania scored a grade of a C+ or lower. So taking a look at this report card, we see that Pennsylvania's lowest scoring infrastructure indicators were drinking water, for which it got a D, storm water, for which it got another D, it's bridges, where it scored a D+, transit, where it scored a D, and lastly, wastewater, where it scored a D-. So infrastructure overall, or your ability to be able to gain access to goods and services in Pennsylvania might be stifled, given the fact that the state has not done enough to invest in the development of its infrastructure. Con number 5, poor liquor laws. Pennsylvania is one of 2 states in the US where the state has complete control over liquor laws. The other state in question is the state of Utah. Now, what does this mean? Let me explain. Pennsylvania liquor laws were actually enacted immediately after the reversal of prohibition. Now, the governor at the time was so upset that prohibition had been reversed, he decided that he was going to implement laws in the state of Pennsylvania to make the buying of alcohol, and I quote, as inconvenient and expensive as possible. So these laws, although they were enacted in 1933, they are still very much in effect today. And essentially what they do is they separate your ability to be able to purchase beer from liquor and wine. So wherever you can go in Pennsylvania to purchase beer, you most likely won't be able to purchase wine and liquor in that same locale. So beer can be purchased from distributors, or otherwise known as bottle stores, whereas liquor and wine can be purchased from state-operated or state-owned stores in the state of Pennsylvania. So on top of this, there are also some additional restrictions as it relates to purchasing alcohol in Pennsylvania, whereby you can only do so at certain times of the day, you can only do so at certain days of the week. Sunday is not a day where you can have a free reign to purchase alcohol. You can only purchase certain quantities of alcohol. You're restricted to the amount that you can purchase at any given time. So sometimes if you are having a large get-together or a big party, a big event, you'll have to make multiple trips. So all of these restrictions do cause residents to sometimes make out-of-state trips to purchase the types of alcohol that they're looking for, or as much alcohol as they would like. So just something for you to keep in mind. If you are someone who enjoys a good drink every once in a while and don't want to feel restricted, then this might be something that could ruffle your feathers. But if you're less spontaneous and more of a planner, and you might be having a party 2 months from now, then you have those 2 months to be able to get all of your liquor and your beer in order while abiding by these restrictions that the state has implemented. All right, so that's it for this video summarizing the top 5 cons of retiring to the state of Pennsylvania. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you learned something new, and I hope to see you in the next one.